My name is Selig. I'm from Germany. I'm 34 years old. First I studied biology. I have a master's degree in biology with a focus on biochemistry, computational biology, neurobiology. And after that I studied medicine. And I was less of an average medical student, and in the fourth year of my med school I noticed that something was off, and someone told me, well, you might lose a little bit weight because it doesn't look that great on you. And I did some measurements, very basic measurements at that time, and my blood pressure was about 140/90. I had a waist circumference of 103 or 4 centimeters, and I had a blood glucose 1 hour after eating up to 180, 190, which is something like 10 millimole. And I didn't realize what it was at that moment, but I said, well, you could lose a little weight. And I went on the internet, and I needed a diet that doesn't require me to count calories, because calorie counting, it seems so neurotic to me. And I always thought, well, nature should do that for me. I do have regulatory systems that will be able to balance in and out. I don't need to consciously count it. And around that time, Andreas Einfeld in Sweden started out with his LCHF diet. Quite soon it became clear he was not the first one, but he said, well, just don't eat carbohydrates and eat a lot of fat. And of course I was a little bit indoctrinated by the environment, because everyone tells you that fat is bad, especially saturated fat. But I said, well, let's cut the carbohydrates, let's do it. And the first 2 meals without pasta, they enlightened me, I would have to say. Yeah? Suddenly there was no carbo crash. This typical carbohydrate crash, 30 minutes after lunch, it didn't come. I didn't know what was going on at that point, but it felt so good. And then I said, well, he's right about the carbohydrates, let's eat a lot of fat. And I went basically full ketogenic. I didn't know the term back then, learned it later. Went full ketogenic, and my weight dropped. It simply dropped. I was no longer hungry, especially I was not hangry, hungry neither. About half a year into it, 10 kilograms, 22 pounds. It was an excellent experience. And later I learned that what I had was metabolic syndrome at the tender age of 28. So I was on a really bad track towards diabetes, heart disease, and everything that comes along with it. So I was able to fight it and to get rid of it. And as I am a scientist by heart, I read and read and read. And first book was by Gary Taubes, Good Calories, Bad Calories. I'm not 100% on board with how he thinks it all works. I'm not on board with his hypothesis any longer, but we have to credit him with asking the right questions regarding nutrition. So what he did was basically ask the heretic questions regarding nutrition that we needed so much in the last 60 years. Yeah, that's basically my story, and now I am a medical practitioner. I am in my last year of residency for general medicine, and I look forward to becoming a specialist, advise some of my patients who want to listen, who want to get serious about weight loss and getting healthy. I advise them on nutrition as far as I can within the current medical system.
Okay. So in America, doctors are afraid to recommend this diet because they might lose their license. How is that different in Germany?
Well, in Germany we do have a tradition where there is a separate branch of naturopaths who only have to pass an exam to prove they are not dangerous to the public. And so they do a lot of stuff, a lot of crazy stuff, and it's all legal as long as you don't cross a certain border when it comes to therapies. And we can advise on low carbohydrate diets without having to fear immediate legal repercussions. There is also not that much legal pressure in Germany, so there are relatively few lawsuits, and most of the lawsuits are regarding surgical treatment. So in internal medicine and in nutritional medicine, it is very unlikely to get sued, especially if you have good contact with the patients, because if you advise someone on a low carbohydrate diet and he drops dead from a heart attack 3 days later, anyone knows it can't be the diet. That's ridiculous. You have to do serious malpractice in Germany or have a criminal record or do drugs to get your license revoked. So we do have a good legal standing regarding new therapies in Germany. The problem is the medical community, which is really conservative, maybe even more conservative than the rest of the world. And most advanced therapies are practiced in silence, often, I would say. So if you do low carb as a general practitioner, you don't speak up about it. And the only thing that is accepted and where you can go into the media is when you have a new drug, when you have a new type of surgery, when you have a new type of radiation therapy. So if you work in the classical paradigm and have something new, you can be outspoken about it. But nutrition is something that is so detached from everyday medical practice. They just say, yeah, the old thing, lose weight, eat less, move more, and that's about it.
Okay. Curious, can you talk any about Caroline? I was speaking with Caroline about her pregnancy.
My wife,
and,
yes.
Yes, your wife, and being keto while pregnant. Can
Yes.
you talk any about that?
Yes, we talk a lot about it. My wife is an engineering student, so she has this kind of picking on anything that requires a certain amount of attention and research, and she loves it. She loves to ask questions. Well, how is that and that working in the body? She had very little problems with her pregnancy up until now, a little bit of back pain, which many women experience. She was not fully ketogenic throughout the entire course of the pregnancy. The palate seems to change, and there is, with very many women, there is this phase of protein aversion. So in the worst days of this protein aversion, she had to go out of the kitchen when I cooked meat because she couldn't smell it. And so on some days she also ate fruit and dairy, high-fat dairy, but still dairy, which contains lactose. So she was not fully ketogenic. We didn't measure, to be honest, but it was mostly low carb and moderate to high fat, and she did really well on it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Does she plan to be keto while breastfeeding, or?
She plans on doing so, but she's also interested in maybe becoming a guinea pig, yeah, and do the N=1 experiment. We talked about maybe having her switch to one kind of diet and recording what she eats, and then send the breast milk to a lab, which tells us how is how's the macronutrient composition of the breast milk, how is what fats are in that breast milk, does it have some influence on the level of immunoglobulins. So it would be an n=1, but if we do it well planned as a crossover n=1 trial, I think we still can find out something interesting.
Yeah.
So every woman which does breastfeeding on keto knows that the cream on top, if you put it in the refrigerator, it's much more fat when you do a ketogenic diet. Yeah,
Right.
quite obviously.
Yeah, right. Fantastic. Okay.
Yes. We have to look a little bit beyond macronutrients. We have to think way beyond macronutrients. Never forget the micronutrients. Our soils are becoming more and more depleted worldwide. The micronutrient content of food is getting lower and lower every year. We do know that. We do have the data on that. And you have to think about ecology and agriculture from perfectly non-political standpoint, because it's important to all of us, no matter what your sensibilities are. We need to preserve the environment some way. And you often hear the vegan argument that animals are bad, but the biological truth is, first of all, half of the planet's landmass surface is grasslands, and they cannot be used as a cropland. So what do we do with that grassland? Because the general theory is that if you put too much animals on the grassland, it will turn into desert, at least in the arid areas of the world. Forget about it. The truth is that the grasslands co-evolved with large grazing animals, and they are strictly dependent on each other. If you take out the grazing animals, if you kill them off, the grassland will deteriorate and it will become desert. You see it in Africa, you see it in Mexico, you see it in the United States, in the Midwest. You have this dust bowl which is erosion by wind. And the reason is because the buffaloes were killed and all the other grazing animals were killed. You have no longer any cover on the soil. You do mass monocultures, and this is getting to a point where we will have no longer a great soil cover in the next couple of decades. And we already grow our crops on dead soil. We only keep it up with fertilizer. So why not get the grazing animals back in? They already do the work, they do the fertilizing, and we can have great grass-fed meat for all 7 billion people on this planet. There is no problem with it. It is not only doable, it is what is necessary to be done. We have to get back the grazing animals, and we'll have a so much better planet for it. And they also put the carbon back into the soil. So everything you hear about climate change, we need to lower our output. We will not be able to lower our output quickly enough. So why don't we start making more CO2 sinks, and grassland will be perfect for that.
Okay.
So get back the animals, get good food, and along with it, save the planet. Yes.